Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening up a stack of sources that honestly feels less like a biography and more like, I don't know, like tracing a map.
A map that just keeps unfolding. It's not a straight line at all.
Not at all. We're talking 3 continents, multiple languages, entire generations. We are looking at the life, the work, and the frankly radical choices of Jhumpa Lahiri.
It's a journey that really does start in London, then moves to Rhode Island, detours through the chaotic streets of Kolkata, and somehow, fascinatingly, ends up on the cobblestone streets of Rome.
And the timing for this deep dive, it really couldn't be better. I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that production for the Netflix adaptation of Unaccustomed Earth kicked off late last year.
September 2025, to be exact.
Exactly. And the buzz is just, it's huge. We've got set photos leaking, casting rumors flying. It's a whole moment.
It really is. But before we get to the red carpets and, the streaming cues, and before we talk about all the prizes and accolades, I want to start somewhere much smaller.
Okay.
I'll start with a name.
Which is actually the perfect place to start with Lahiri. Because looking at these sources, it becomes so clear that for her, naming has never been a simple act. It's almost a battleground.
Exactly. So let's look at the official record. Her birth name, the name on the birth certificate, is Nilanjana Sudeshna Lahiri.
It's beautiful. It sounds so regal.
It is. It's a classic, formal Bengali name. And in Bengali culture, there's this fascinating tradition of having 2 names. You have the Bolonam, which literally means the good name.
The good name.
Right. That's for the outside world, for documents, for diplomas. And then you have the Daknam, which is the pet name.
Okay, so that's the one used at home.
Only at home. By family and very close friends. It's intimate.
So Nilanjana Sudeshna is the Bolonam.
Correct. And Jhumpa, that was the Daknam, the pet name. It was never, ever meant to be on a book jacket.
So how did we end up with Jhumpa Lahiri on the cover of millions of books? I mean, what happened?
Well, this is where the story gets a little heartbreaking, if I'm honest. It goes back to when she started kindergarten in Kingston, Rhode Island.
Oh, no.
She shows up, this little girl with this beautiful multisyllabic name, Nilanjana Sudeshna. And the teachers, they just looked at it and essentially said no.
You're kidding. They just refused to use it?
They decided it was too hard to pronounce. So unilaterally, the school decided, we're going to call you by your pet name because it's easier for us. They just dragged her private identity out into the public sphere.
Just because her real name was an inconvenience to the adults in the room?
Yes.
Can you imagine the psychological weight of that? You're 5 years old, and the authority figures in your life tell you that your very identity is too difficult, so they're just going to change it.
It's such a pivotal moment in her formation. Lahiri has spoken about this with such poignancy. I have a quote here. Let me find it. Here it is. She says, "I always felt so embarrassed by my name. You feel like you're causing someone pain just by being who you are."
Causing someone pain just by being who you are? Wow, that hits hard.
It does. It suggests that your existence, or at least the label attached to it, causes discomfort to the dominant culture. And that idea, that friction between who you are and how the world wants to label you, that is the seed of so much of her writing.
And I guess that sets the stage for what we're trying to do today. Our mission on this deep dive is to explore how a writer who is so obsessed with this in-between space, between names, between countries, between languages, how she completely redefined the immigrant experience in literature.
And we aren't just talking about the immigrant experience of the 90s. We're going to look at how she evolves that conversation into the second and even third generations. We're going to track her meteoric rise, her absolutely baffling pivot to the Italian language.
Oh, we have to get into that.
We will. And the current political and cultural context she's operating in as of right now in 2026.
So let's rewind. Let's get the origin story straight. Nilanjana Sudeshna Jhumpa Lahiri is born in London in 1967, but they don't stay there long, right?
No, not at all. Her parents are Bengali immigrants. Her father's from a place called Tollygunge, her mother from North Kolkata. They moved to London first, then to Cambridge, Massachusetts for a bit.
The other Cambridge?
The other Cambridge, right. And that's when Jhumpa is just 3 years old. Finally, they settle in South Kingstown, Rhode Island.
So she's really a Rhode Island kid for all intents and purposes.
Effectively, yes. Her dad gets a job as a librarian at the University of Rhode Island, which, side note, sounds like the absolute perfect incubation chamber for a future Pulitzer winner.
Unlimited access to books, yeah, absolutely. But despite growing up in the U.S., her citizenship status was this whole complex, layered thing.
Oh, it was a mess. Even though she was living in Rhode Island, going to American schools, she held an Indian citizenship for a long time, because she was, and this is the official term, appended to her mother's passport.
Appended. It sounds like she was a piece of luggage.
It's a very bureaucratic, kind of dehumanizing term. And she says that for her mother, that passport was a vital emotional link back to India. But for Jhumpa, she said it always seemed wrong.
Because she wasn't living in India?
Exactly. She didn't have that visceral connection her parents had. She was a kid in New England trying to fit in.
And eventually she had to renounce that Indian citizenship to become a naturalized American. And then, much later, she even received a British passport because she was born there.
Right. So she's technically a citizen of the U.S. and the U.K., but she's famously said, I wasn't born here, but I might as well have been, referring to America. Yet at the same time, she always felt like an outsider.
There's this tension she describes, feeling intense pressure to be two things at once.
Two completely different things. She had to be loyal to the old world inside the house, eating Bengali food, speaking the language, respecting all the customs. But the second she stepped out that front door,
She had to be fluent in the new world. Total code switching.
constant code switching. And I think a lot of listeners can relate to that, even if they aren't children of immigrants, that feeling of having to be a different person for your parents than you are for your friends.
Sure.
But for Lahiri, that pressure cooker created a writer, and it started with something she calls her first dishonest act.
Oh, I love this story. So, the Pulitzer Prize winner, her career starts as a petty thief.
A very specific kind of petty thief, to be fair.
She would steal extra notebooks from the school closets, just swipe them, and she'd use them to write fiction. But here's what I find so fascinating. She wasn't writing about Bengal or the immigrant experience yet.
No, not at all.
She was writing about the victims of Mean Girls.
Which is arguably one of the most universal experiences for any child who feels like an outsider. She wasn't writing about culture with a capital C yet. She was analyzing power dynamics. She was looking at who has power on the playground and who doesn't.
And she hid these notebooks, right? She never showed them to any adults.
Never. I think it was about control. When your name is changed by teachers, when your citizenship is decided by your parents, when you feel like a total anomaly, writing is the one place where you are God. You control the narrative. You control who wins and who loses.
And speaking of losing control or being perceived in a way you can't control, we have to talk about her acting career. Or I guess her failed acting career.
Failed might be a bit harsh, but certainly typecast.
Severely typecast. She loved acting in school plays, but get this, she was always cast as the villain. Always.
She was the witch in Hansel and Gretel.
And she was Fagin in Oliver Twist. Why? Because, in her own words, I wasn't blonde and white, to cut to the chase.
It's such a stark reminder of the racial landscape of New England in the 70s and 80s. If you aren't white, you're the other. You're the antagonist. You're the scary thing in the woods. And while she eventually moved away from acting, that sense of being perceived as the other never really left her.
It just moved into her text.
Exactly.
So she retreats from the stage to the page. And she didn't just sit around and mope about it. She hit the books hard. I knew she was smart. But looking at her academic record, it's actually intimidating.
It is rigorously impressive. She didn't just stumble into writing. She studied the mechanics of literature at the absolute highest levels. She went to Barnard College for her BA, and then she basically moved into Boston University for a very long time.
She just set up camp there.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
She earned an MA in English,
Okay.
then an MFA in creative writing,
Makes sense.
then another MA in comparative literature, and finally a PhD in Renaissance studies.
Wait. 4 graduate degrees from one university. That is serious dedication, and her dissertation topic is so specific. The Italian Palazzo and Jacobean stage plays.
Which at the time probably seemed like a really niche academic interest.
Huh.
Why is this Indian-American woman studying Italian architecture in Old English plays?
But if you look at where her career goes later.
Her obsession with Italy. Yes. With Italy, with architecture, with spaces, with who belongs inside the palace and who is left on the street. You can see the seeds were planted right there in that PhD work.
So she's got the degrees, she's got the stolen notebooks. But the path to fame, it wasn't a straight line. She wasn't an overnight success, was she?
Not even close. In the late 90s, she was facing rejection after rejection from literary magazines. She was working as an unpaid intern at Boston Magazine.
Doing what? Writing cover stories.
Hardly. She was writing, and this is a direct quote, flattering items about consumer products.
Oof. From Renaissance studies to writing blurbs about shampoo. That is a serious reality check.
It is. She also worked at a bookstore, literally just opening boxes. But she kept writing. At age 30, she wrote a story called A Temporary Matter, which was the first short story she wrote as an adult, and that story became the anchor for her debut collection.
Interpreter of Maladies.
That's the one.
And when Interpreter of Maladies dropped in 1999, it didn't just make a splash, it was a tidal wave.
It really was. And you have to understand the publishing landscape back then to get how weird this was. Short story collections. They are the eat your vegetables of the literary world.
Nobody buys them.
They rarely sell. They're usually seen as a warm-up act for a novel.
Yeah.
But Interpreter of Maladies won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction.
That is just wild.
It was only the 7th time in history that a story collection had won that award. It's an incredible achievement.
And it sold, what was it, 600,000 copies? For a short story collection, people were devouring these stories. What was it about them? What was the hook?
I think they were about specific tangible pain, marital difficulties, stillborn children, the disconnection between generations. But they were written with this incredibly elegant, quiet restraint. She wasn't shouting at you, she was whispering, and the whole world leaned in to listen.
Well, almost the whole world. Because not everyone was cheering, right? There was some backlash.
Right. While the American literary establishment was, throwing roses at her feet, the reception in India was mixed. Some critics there felt she wasn't painting Indians in a positive light.
The classic burden of representation.
Exactly that. When you're one of the few voices from a community reaching that level of fame, people want you to be a PR agent for the entire culture. They want good immigrants, doctors, engineers, happy families. But Lahiri was writing about messy, complicated, sometimes unhappy people.
She was writing about the maladies, literally.
She refused to sanitize the experience, and I think that honesty is what makes the work endure.
So she conquers the short story. Then comes the first novel, The Namesake, in 2003. And we have to talk about the inspiration for this because it is terrifying. It's based on a real train wreck.
It is. And this is a story Lahiri heard growing up. It was part of her family lore. Her father's cousin was in a horrific train wreck in India. He was buried under debris, twisted metal everywhere. Everyone thought he was gone.
Oh, my.
And he was only saved because rescue workers, in the dark, happened to see a beam of light reflecting off the face of his wristwatch.
That gives me chills. Just a single glint of light saving a life.
It's incredibly cinematic. And Lahiri took that real trauma and transmuted it into fiction. In The Namesake, the protagonist's father is also in a train wreck. But she changes one crucial detail. Instead of a watch, he's clutching a book.
A book by the Russian author Nikolai Gogol.
Yes. And he's saved because a rescuer's flashlight illuminates the fluttering page of the book.
And that is why the son in the book is named Gogol.
Precisely. The father names his son after the author who, in his mind, saved him. But think about it from the son's perspective. He grows up in America. He doesn't know about the train wreck initially. To him, Gogol is just a weird, ugly name that no one can pronounce.
He hates it.
He hates it. And it ties back perfectly to Lahiri's own childhood embarrassment about her name. It's about that gap between what a name means to a parent history, trauma, survival, and what it means to a child, awkwardness, alienation, just wanting to be normal.
It's the perfect metaphor for the immigrant gap. The parents are living in this ghost world of memory, and the kids are living in the harsh light of an American high school cafeteria.
So well put. That's exactly it.
And of course, The Namesake became a huge movie in 2007. Cal Penn played Gogol, Mira Nair directed it, and Lahiri herself made a cameo.
She did. She played Aunt Jhumpa. It was a nice little full-circle moment for the girl who used to be cast as the witch in Hansel and Gretel to now be in a Hollywood movie about her own life's work.
Okay, so she's established herself as the voice of the first-generation Indian immigrant experience. But then comes 2008 and her next collection, Unaccustomed Earth.
And this book was a juggernaut. It debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list.
I need to pause on that again. A short story collection debuted at #1.
It is almost unheard of. That kind of thing is reserved for, Stephen King or John Grisham novels. It showed that she had crossed over from literary darling to a genuine commercial powerhouse.
But artistically, this book marked a real shift, right?
Yeah, a huge shift. Her earlier work was very much about the parents, the people who got on the plane, the people who were struggling to raise families in this strange new land. Unaccustomed Earth shifts the lens.
It shifts to the children.
To the second and third generations.
Right.
The ones born here.
Mm-hmm.
And their problems are totally different. These characters aren't just trying to survive. They are breaking away. They are rejecting the joint family mindset where everyone lives under one roof.
Right.
They're prioritizing their individual needs, their careers, their relationships, often at the cost of family cohesion.
So it's less about how do I use a microwave and more about how do I tell my mom I'm moving to Seattle to be an artist and I'm not going to be a doctor.
Exactly. It explores the guilt of assimilation, the realization that becoming American often means becoming distant. It's about the silence that can grow between a parent who sacrificed everything and a child who just wants to be left alone to live their own life.
Then we get The Lowland in 2013, which gets shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. It goes much deeper into Indian politics, specifically the Naxalite movement. But then something happens, something that frankly baffled a lot of people in the literary world.
The Italian turn.
The Italian turn. This is the plot twist I did not see coming. In 2012, Jhumpa Lahiri packs up her entire family, her husband, her 2 kids, and moves to Rome. And she decides, you know what, I'm done writing in English.
It is one of the most radical, maybe one of the bravest moves in contemporary literature. Here you have a writer who has won the Pulitzer Prize in English. She has mastered the language. She is at the absolute peak of her career.
And she just throws it all away.
She voluntarily abandons her primary tool.
It's like a master carpenter deciding to throw away all their saws and chisels and trying to build a house with a plastic spoon. Why?
Why? Yeah.
Was she bored? Did she just need a challenge?
I think it's so much deeper than boredom. She has spoken about this with great clarity. For Lahiri, English always represented a kind of burden. On one side, it was the language of her assimilation, the language that separated her from her parents' Bengali.
Oh, okay.
On the other side is the language where she had to be perfect to prove she belonged to win the Pulitzer. It was the language of high stakes.
So English was stressful, it was work.
It was loaded. It was heavy. Italian offered a neutral ground. She had no blood connection to it, no colonial history with it. She chose it for herself. It was a language of pure discovery. She calls it a linguistic metamorphosis.
It's like she needed to be a beginner again, to not be Jhumpa Lahiri Pulitzer Prize winner, but just Jhumpa, the student.
Yes. And interestingly, she describes her writing in Italian as completely different. It's sparser, it's more direct. When you have a limited vocabulary, you have to be precise. You can't hide behind flowery adjectives or complex clauses.
Right. You have to say, I am sad, not melancholy washed over me like a gray tide.
Exactly. The limitation actually freed her. And she didn't just write in it. She became a true scholar of it. She edited the Penguin Book of Italian short stories, translating works by 40 different Italian writers.
And she even started translating her own Italian books back into English.
Which is just a mind-bending process. Imagine writing a book in your third language and then translating it back into your first language. You are essentially translating yourself.
It validates her entire thesis. Identity isn't fixed. It's constructed, and it can be deconstructed and reconstructed. You can build a new version of yourself in a new language.
It's radical.
Okay, let's bring this into the present day. We are recording this in January 2026. Lahiri is back in the spotlight in a very big way.
She is. That Netflix adaptation of Unaccustomed Earth is the talk of the town.
It was announced back in April of 2025. Filming started in September. We've got Freida Pinto and Siddharth starring, produced by John Wells, and Lahiri herself is an executive producer.
This adaptation is so significant because Unaccustomed Earth is such a sprawling, subtle book. It's not an action movie. It's deeply internal. Seeing it adapted for a global streaming audience, that really cements her status as a cultural icon, not just a literary one.
It brings those themes of second-generation drift to a massive audience who might never pick up a short story collection.
It's mainstreaming the in-between.
Exactly. But it hasn't all been red carpets and streaming deals for her. Lahiri has been very active politically in the last couple of years, particularly regarding the Middle East. And this has surprised some people.
Yes, and this is important context for who she is now as a public intellectual.
Yeah.
In September 2024, there was a significant controversy involving the Noguchi Museum in New York.
Right, the Isamu Noguchi Award. She was supposed to receive it. A huge honor.
A huge honor. But the museum had fired 3 employees for wearing keffiyehs, which are, traditional Palestinian scarves in solidarity with Palestine. In protest of those firings, Lahiri publicly withdrew her acceptance of the award.
That is a very strong statement. Turning down a major award is not something you do lightly.
It was a clear line in the sand, and she didn't stop there. In October 2024, she signed an open letter alongside thousands of other authors pledging to boycott Israeli cultural institutions.
Now, some people might be surprised by this activism because her books are often seen as these quiet domestic dramas. People think, oh, she writes about tea and family dinners and arranged marriages.
And I think that's a real misreading of her work. Yes, her books are quiet, but they are deeply fundamentally concerned with displacement, with power dynamics, with who gets to belong and who is cast out.
So this isn't a pivot for her.
Not at all. I see it as an extension of her core themes. Her solidarity with displaced people, whether in Bengal or Palestine, is completely consistent with the moral universe of her fiction. She understands what it means to be stateless, or to have your identity questioned or even erased.
So whether she is writing about an Indian immigrant feeling out of place in Rhode Island or taking a stand for Palestinian employees in New York, she is always looking at the person who's being told, you don't belong here.
Exact.
So what does this all mean? When you put it all together, we have the girl who stole notebooks to write about Mean Girls. We have the Pulitzer winner who dissected the immigrant marriage. We have the Roman expat writing in a new tongue. And now the executive producer and the political activist.
It means that Jhumpa Lahiri is a writer who absolutely refuses to be static. She refuses to be the good immigrant writer who just retells the same story over and over to make audiences feel comfortable or cultured.
She just keeps breaking the mold.
She smashed the mold of the dutiful daughter by becoming a writer in the first place. She smashed the mold of the Indian-American writer by moving to Italy and rejecting English. She validates the in-between experience not as a tragedy, but as a position of strength, of complexity. She teaches us that you don't have to choose one identity.
You can live in the hyphen.
You can live in the hyphen.
I hate that.
I like that. Yes, and honestly, her journey is a kind of invitation. Lahiri once said her writing shrank in proportion to her years because of self-doubt. She felt she was getting smaller, less daring.
But by switching languages in her 40s, she did the opposite. She expanded, she reset her entire career.
She chose to grow.
That brings me to our final thought for you, the listener. Lahiri dared to be a beginner at the absolute height of her success. She dropped the one thing she was best at, her English prose, to struggle, to be clumsy in Italian.
It's a terrifying and beautiful thing to do. To voluntarily become a student again when you're already a master.
So here is the question for you listening right now. Is there a language in your life? And I mean that broadly. It could be a career skill, a hobby, a persona, a way of being that you are holding on to just because it's what you know, just because you're fluent in it.
And what would happen if you dared to put it down?
What would happen if you dared to start from zero in something completely new?
You might just find a whole new voice.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Ciao.